Hi everybody and welcome to Wednesday webinar. Thank you for joining me on this really important Wednesday. So today we're going to have something slightly different. We're going to listen to the story of Zara Kayani, and Zara is amazing. She was the winner of the Violet Rees Prize 2019. And she embarked on her law course and trying to qualify as a barrister. And last year, the 10th of September 2020, we sat down and we talked about Zara's journey from A-levels, degree, doing her postgraduate studies, and then trying to find pupillage in order to qualify as a barrister. And over the series of our talks, we ended up with three really interesting discussions about her life and her journey. And that's really what I want you to listen to today, because it's a really inspiring story from somebody who I think the legal profession desperately needs to qualify as a barrister, because she is an amazing person and is currently doing amazing work and will be even better when she qualifies. So I'm going to share my video with you of our conversation that we had back in September 2020, and the discussion that we had. The first video was primarily talking about Zara's time doing her A-levels, getting to university, and then deciding on what she was going to do when she got there. So we're going to start with Zara, my journey into this podcast that I am recording with the famous Zara Kayani.
Hi, thank you very much, Suzanne, for your time today.
Right, let's talk about you, Zara, because nobody knows who you are. So in a few sentences, Zara, who are you? How would you describe yourself?
My name is Zara Kayani. I'm 27 years old, originally from Sheffield. Obviously, I'm an aspiring barrister. If I was to describe myself in three words, I would say I'm driven, passionate, and committed.
Wow. Okay. Driven, passionate, and committed. Now, I know a lot of aspiring barristers, and a lot of them say they're driven, passionate, and committed. Zara, how have you demonstrated that you're driven, passionate, and committed to becoming an aspiring barrister?
Well, first of all, Suzanne, having grown up on the wrong side of the law, let's say during my school days, I've now hopefully become on the right side of law through practicing as a barrister. I'm committed because my journey to the bar has been an extremely difficult journey. I've had to turn my life around just to concentrate on the bar. I'm driven because as like everyone else, we all go through ups and downs. We go through high points, low points, and failures. And I've always stayed committed and driven to get to where I am. Passionate because for me, I don't see a career beyond becoming a barrister. That's all I want to do in life and to practice. And that is why I would say I'm passionate in my journey.
Right. Okay. So, Zara, why do you even want to become a barrister?
So like I said, Susanna, when I was back in school days, I was infamous for arguing with the teachers. Let's just say
Not an arguer.
let's just say I would never want to admit I was wrong. And I was always able to think on my feet. And whenever I was caught doing something wrong, I always had a excuse, let's just say. And I had that ability to think on my feet. And eventually, as I grew up old, I started to think about what I wanted to do post 16. Naturally, law was just something that came natural to me. And as I went through my undergraduate years, I started to look more into the roots. And why I wanted to become a barrister more than a solicitor was because I loved the idea of fighting and presenting my case in court. I loved to argue. I loved the opportunity to have a challenge. And I wanted to be in an environment where I'm able to use my gift of arguing and the gift of challenging, and to be able to think on my feet and to put that in a positive way, which is to become a barrister.
Zara, did anyone else in your family go into the legal profession? I mean, where do you think you got this ability to argue your point and to be determined about it? Where did that come from?
So naturally, my family, we have a background of teaching and nursing. So I'm the only person that's completely gone in a completely different field, and I think where I've got that from is one rule my father always taught me was that never be the person to start the fight, but always defend yourself. And I think I took that the wrong way completely. Let's just say that was my defense mechanism. And I think naturally, just through my history back in school days,
Yeah.
what I went through, all that is what eventually led me to law. And I look back and I do think now, because sometimes I find it quite shocking and how I've ended up in this route as becoming a barrister, because a few years ago, I don't think that's where I thought my life was heading. But I think that's how naturally, like I said, I was always defensive. I was always quick to give teachers an answer and to always come up with an excuse and a justification for my behaviour. And I think that just naturally led me through law. And also in sixth form, I used to take part in debating. Again, that was an excellent opportunity to try and think that I'm always right, and present it in a articulate way.
So that sounds really interesting, and it sort of reminds me a little bit about how I was when I was doing my A levels. I think it's a great time for you to discover who you are and to decide what you want to do with your life. Do you think there was one particular point where it suddenly popped into your head, look, maybe I should be a barrister, or was it just a gradual thing that came to you over time?
So obviously when I was in A levels, I decided at that point, first initially I chose um, a joint honours degree in law and creative writing, because one of the ways I was able to express my feelings was through a form of poetry.
Wow.
So I chose law and creative writing, which I remember my father clearly saying to me, it can only be you who would pick a course which nobody's ever heard of combining together. There were
I've
two very random
never
courses.
heard of law and creative writing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a new experience. So when I went in, when I started university, I then what I think one of the reasons, or one of the 10 points where I decided I wanted to put my all into a career at the bar was during my second year of university, because I didn't realize I chose a joint honours, which is slightly different to an LLB law degree. I took part in a mock trial. And I remember at that time the lecturer scored me 82%, and he stopped me and he said, like, Zara, why have I not met you before? Why are you on the joint honour scheme, and why are you not doing LLB law? And then at that point, I'd explained to him that I didn't have a clue what I was entering, and I didn't realise there was a difference. And from there, he was like, you need to transfer onto the LLB because you've got potential to make it far. And from there, I went to the module leader. It was an uphill battle. Let's say it wasn't easy to try and convince them to let me transfer. But given that I was heading towards the right track, and given the recommendation of that particular tutor, I was able to transfer. But it meant that I had to come back a year to make up certain modules.
Wow. So even at the very beginning, it wasn't a straightforward journey. There's a choice between law and creative writing. There's someone who likes to argue but very good at mock trials. That's really interesting. So then you go on to university, you get onto the LLB and you do your law degree. What was it like after you left law school?
So after I left law school, I think it was towards the final year, I was discussing with my friends that I wanted to do the bar. So I applied to join Lincoln's Inn first, um, and I didn't get through for a scholarship. So I just decided to naturally just join Gray's Inn. I liked the fact that it was small and intimate. And then I just took the summer. It was the summer period, and if I'm honest, Suzanne, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I didn't know anybody who had done the bar. I didn't really know what I was expecting. So I kind of just, let's just say I had a reality check halfway through my bar course when I realised actually there's so much I learned. So during the actual bar course, it was very intense. And I remember before I joined BPP Law School, I spoke to my parents because obviously it was 16 or 17,000 pounds to pay, and obviously that's a lot of money, and I had no scholarship, and I didn't want to go to the bank of mum and dad. If I'm honest, I just felt that they've already done a lot, and I've seen the struggles that they face to raise the children to a standard where we're all in professional capacities. But when I spoke to my parents, they were really adamant that I took the bar and that I did it straight away, because they just didn't want me to waste time, or they didn't want me to just become disheartened in my career. So they said that they would like to gift it me by paying for the bar course, and that I should just use this opportunity to really focus on what I want to do.
How did you sort of adapt with the new learning skills that you had to learn very quickly, and you're in a new environment with new people, you come from Sheffield, you're in London. How did you cope with all of that?
So I think I've always been independent. I think since I was 17, going on to 18, when I went to University of Derby, I grew up very quickly in terms of my independence. So from there, from there, I was just kind of able to do a lot of learning and stuff. But then going on to the bar, it was, I think just in general, it was quite intense. How it became better for me, I think, was the fact that the friend, well, the people that I met on the bar course ended up becoming literally like family for me. Went through, we all went through the same emotions, and I think that was really important because I had someone who understood me, who understood what we were going through. And I think at that point, when I first started the bar course, I think I saw it as a competition amongst my colleagues. But you know how you can have a competition to become for a pupillage. I think I saw it like that, but eventually, I think we all realised that actually we're all here for one purpose and one goal, to pass the bar. And we realised sooner that the more we help each other, in actual fact, it's going to be better for us. It was extremely intense. I would say the first few months I didn't realise the intensity of it. And I had to come to a point where I had to balance my time because I was working as a barista in Starbucks at that time. And I was also, from January to June, I travelled back and forth from like Birmingham to Leeds to volunteer for NSPCC Childline as a voluntary counsellor. So I was here, there, everywhere. I would say it's a adrenaline rush. And I would say you want to pull your hair out throughout it, but at the same time, when you look back at it, it's an experience. Only those who have gone through it will understand how much you hate it but love it at the same time.
Gosh, I've heard that said so many times by students about um, how difficult it was, how all-consuming it was, and then a couple of years later, when they've qualified, they look back at that time quite fondly. Once you've gone through the bar course and you've come out of it and you've passed, how do you feel when you get to the end of that process?
Um, so my bar year wasn't exactly easy. Towards the central examinations, I developed a kidney infection. So that meant my three central exams got deferred.
Okay.
And then when it was time to take them in August, very unexpectedly, my grandfather passed away.
Okay, so
Um, it was a very sudden bereavement. So I was all over the place, and it was a very difficult period because I was like, I just want to put the bar behind me, but
yeah.
I couldn't. So the best decision at that point was to defer it again for the following year. So I sat my central exams, And then I passed ethics and crime, criminal litigation, but unfortunately I didn't pass civil at that time. And let's just say civil has been the bane of my life. My £17,000 depended on that final resit of a civil exam I had, and I wallowed in self-pity. I remember, Suzanne, I called, I think she was a tutor. I found her on the internet, and I called her because what happened was, when I sat my civil exam, the Bar Standard Board introduced something called an Angoff method, which meant that we were told by university that the pass mark roughly is 42 or 43 at that time.
Okay.
But after the exam, depending on how easy or difficult the exam is, the Bar Standard Board can vary their pass mark slightly.
Just to keep the same percentage of people pass.
Yeah. So what had happened was, at that time when I sat the civil first time round, and I'll be honest, civil was the one module I completely struggled with. It was very difficult for me to get my head around at that point. So when I sat the civil exam, I got my result back. It said 59%, and the pass mark was 60. So I first applied to my university for a clerical error check. And then before I did that, I waited for BSB to send back feedback where they have like a bar graph of what you overall got. When the BSB sent the feedback sheet, I noticed the top bar, which had the pass mark, the bar was past 60. So I was really, really confused by that. So I rang BPP, requested a clerical error check. Then I contacted BSB, and I paid for an enhanced clerical error check. And then once all that came back, what had happened was that the civil pass mark got moved from 43 to 47. I fell on 46 because the Angoff method was introduced, and the mark was slightly increased. So at that point, I rang a tutor because I decided I think I need a tutor to help me with civil, to tutor. So I rang her, and I said to her that I got 59% and I was very close and I failed. And she turned around, and I didn't expect it. Until this day, I laugh with my friend about it. The lady said to me, Zara, a fail is a fail. Just how a person dies, they're not a little bit dead, they're not more dead, they are dead. Likewise, you failed. It doesn't care if it's by 1%, 5%, 10%. The fact is, you failed. Now we need to look at why you failed. Let's just say, Suzanne, I didn't have the guts to call her back again and say I want you to help me, because she just scared the living daylights out of me. But it was reality.
It's like cold water on you, isn't it?
Yeah.
You failed. It don't matter that you just failed by 1 point or 1%. Okay, so you failed. How do you turn it around with civil litigation?
So I kept looking back at where I went wrong. I changed my revision technique. I decided that I needed to stop working because I was working full time. I stopped working a few months before my exam, and because it was one exam left, it was a lot more easier for me to give all my time. I created a timetable. I'd go to the library, revise from 9 till 6. Sometimes on the weekend it'd go till about 8 and 9. But what helped me the most was practicing my multiple choice questions. I created a massive A4 sheet. I think it's A4 sheet, A3, the big piece of paper. And I think I had 1,000 questions written on it, because I got this massive like a MCQ civil litigation bank questions, and I went through every single one. So in the morning I'd revise, afternoon MCQ test, and I'd switch around like that. And then literally I think I had to remind myself that £17,000 depended on this exam, and it was either to do or die. And I couldn't think of what would happen if I didn't pass the bar. And in the back of my mind, just thinking of my parents, what it meant to them, I didn't see no other option apart from passing.
Yeah, absolutely. Know the feeling. My gosh, Zara, that's really fantastic. So I can't wait now for our next podcast where we're going to look at what you do in the stage after you finish your exams and before you become a formal barrister called pupillage. And
Sure.
gosh, it's been so exciting this far. I can't wait to hear what happens to you in the next stage of things. So, Zara, thank you very much for your time. Lovely to speak to you. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, then sign in for the part 2 of Zara, my journey to becoming a barrister.
Okay, that was so interesting. And what I really like about Zara is that she's honest, she's actually passionate, she's driven, she has determination. And you can listen next week and hear about how she gets on after she's finished her course. And I think it's really important for students not just to hear about great success stories where everything works smoothly. You saw with Zara, you know, you choose a course that you want, creative study and law, but it has implications for your career. You have to switch to the LLB if you want to become a solicitor. That means an extra year of study. You get in to do your postgraduate studies, you get illness, you have, unfortunately, a family bereavement. Life gets in the way. And that's what it's like for a lot of people. It's not just a straightforward story of success, success, success. Life is about ups and downs, dealing with the challenges and keep going. And, you know, the qualities that someone like Zara brings to the legal profession is so important, that the legal profession embraces people who don't come from this very sort of traditional legal background, who don't have a history of family being barristers or solicitors, and haven't gone to, you know, Oxbridge. They've gone to other universities and they may not have passed all their exams in the first attempt, but the qualities, the personality, can you imagine having Zara at court defending your case? Someone so passionate. And we'll hear about her advocacy work in the next exercise. But I hope that you're inspired by listening to Zara's story. I hope you want to listen to the second part of Zara's story, and we'll deal with that next week. But I want to say, have a wonderful week. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the football this evening. And I will see you next week for Wednesday webinar. Bye, everybody.